Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 73. I'm Enigmius and today, of course, the Manta continuing. This time we're working on the profile for the air intake. We did a side profile in the last episode and I wasn't really happy with it. It wasn't doing the job, so to speak. So after we did the profiles for the main upper hull section, I decided that we would just clear out the stuff that we had done before on the air intake, get the elliptical tube profile set up, and then take it from there and see how far we get with the air intake on this episode. This is going to be kind of a challenging section, again, because we've got so many different transitions going on. We've got transitions from the top of the tube to the top of the ship, the side of the tube, the side of the ship, the side, middle, top of the tube to the rounded portion of the ship's left hand. Who knows how crazy this could get, but we do know that the whole concept of the profile and getting everything set up in the lines and the shapes to make things easier down the road do in fact make things easier down the road. So that's what we're kind of focusing on now. You can see we've got a pretty decent elliptical shape taking shape using a lot of the half blocks, which I'm kind of two minds about these half blocks because they can make things a little bit more refined. You can do things a little bit more smoothly, more transitions, softer edges, so to speak. But they're kind of a pain in the butt to transition into other things because we have a limited selection of blocks that go with them in ways that are useful and allow us to connect other angles and such. So I'm trying to use them sparingly in situations where I know it won't be too especially difficult to make all the necessary transitions, but it's hard to predict sometimes when we're using them initially how they're going to work out for us, whether they're going to work out or not. In this case, you can see we're starting to fill in the tube so that we get an idea of what it'll look like, mostly from the side. We've already seen what it's going to look like from the front because we did the profile, and now from the side we get to see it's actually not too bad. It's got enough smoothness to it, despite the angles changing as we go around, that it's sort of convincing as a tube. If we could do a perfect tube, that would be kind of neat. It'd be very, very hard on the performance of the game, I think, if you had too many perfect curve tubes running around shooting at one another. I can see that being sort of a headache. But you get the idea now. If my descriptions in the past of what I had in mind for these air intake tubes were not clear enough, that it's sort of like the elliptical sort of thing that's squashed into the side of the ship, and it's purely cosmetic. The thought occurred to me that maybe it'll be in these tubes where we place the reverse thrusters, because so far in terms of thrusters, all we've got on the ship is the forward thrusters that push us forward. We don't have reverse thrusters to slow us down or allow us to move backwards. As you might expect with the name reverse thrusters. We don't have lateral thrusters for moving side to side. Those will probably be put into the tubes for the air intake as well, just because it seems like a natural good spot for them. We can worry about all of that later. It's not especially difficult on a ship this size to find room for thrusters. It's just one of those things where there's room all over the place and you just have to decide which one you like best. This part of the transition here could have been really, really difficult. You can see we've gone from the straight tube sort of thing to a bit of an angle. I was very, very fortunate. I would like to be able to say that the transition coming down into the main section of the hull was a result of careful planning, experience, expertise, and just raw talent, but the reality is it was just luck. And you'll see what I'm talking about momentarily here. It's kind of clearing things out of the way and bringing it down. This could have been one of those transitions that you spend a lot of time sculpting and resculpting and just fiddling around with it to get it right, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, playing the game to spend time being entertained and then complaining that we have to spend time, maybe not the most productive complaint, but in this case, having things come together in the way that they did certainly saved a very significant amount of time. You see it just perfectly lined up with the existing hull, which is kind of cool. So the air intake, as you can see, is going to sweep back a little bit towards the hull. The thing that I have to be careful of is because we blocked in those large sections of the hull after we did the back section with the rings for the thrusters, is that there's a lot of flat spaces on the hull that aren't necessarily bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have flat spaces in ship design, of course, but we have to be a little bit careful about how we manage the transitions, what kind of flat spaces we leave and where, if we're going to be happy with the long term. And I can already tell that there's going to be some changes that we'll make to the air intakes a little bit farther on down the line. Once we get more of the upper hull sculpted and in place, it won't necessarily be the world's biggest resculpting. It's not going to be, I don't expect it to be this massive sort of rework, but there will be opportunities for us to get down to the business of working things out and refining them, doing a few more iterative passes, so to speak, so that we get things shaped the way that we want them to be. And in this case, I have to say, this is going together a lot more smoothly than I had originally expected. I was kind of expecting a bit more of a nightmare, but you can see we've got those little notches in the top there, and there's also another one down the other side, down the far side of the tube. I actually like those. As I'm putting that kind of thing in where there's really no way to make a perfectly smooth transition, we can get things like that in place that actually look like they would be a part of a design. If you look at any kind of vehicle that's been made in the last 50 years, there are little things like that that just happen to be in various different places, and they're always there for a reason. They're never there because somebody didn't care enough to figure it out. But it makes it so that we can look at it and say, as far as our design goes and what we may or may not be happy with, that's not too bad. We could be in pretty good shape with this thing. So we've got that slope section on the top right towards the back of the ship with the two little notches as it's transitioning from the straight tube portion. We've got the top section, which is going to eventually be reworked. And of course, that will necessitate doing the far side as well, that little slope section that we did. And now we're just kind of seeing what we can do. This is the very, very, very experimental stages of the design, because this is one of the more tricky transitional parts, is having this tube kind of slope back, line up nicely with the straight part of the tube, and also give us the angle we need to line up with the existing sloped parts that we've got. And sometimes you just got to throw things down and see how it looks. We know we're not going to get a perfect transition all the way across. So then we look at what we can get with the 22.5 degree angles, what we can get with the 45 degree angles. Just by experimenting is basically how we're going to get this transition resolved. There's not necessarily something in my head that's already telling me it's got to be a certain way, which is good, because those are the ones that get us in trouble. In this case, it's definitely good to have a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of willingness to kind of just place blocks and see how it looks. And if they don't work out, remove them and place something else. In our case, again, it's the flat sections that I'm mostly concerned about handling, and the transitions into those flat sections, how many flat sections we're leaving behind and what we can do with them if we do have to leave them behind, so that they don't look like those parts of the ship where we just didn't care. There's none of those. We care about all of them. So I'll leave you guys with it. Like I say, it's just experimental, placing things, seeing how they look. You can take a look at what's going on and take a look at how it's going to end up for this episode. The next episode, we're going to carry on. We're going to get focused on these air intakes until they're 90%-ish done. Save the reworks for a little bit later. We'll duplicate the stuff that we like onto the other side, and then we'll get started on the top hull. We're getting there. We're making a lot of progress. We're in the stage now where, because we've got so much of the prep work done in the lower sections and the rear section, we've got the profiles in place. Things are going to come together fairly quickly from this point forward. And if you want to be notified about those future videos where things come together quickly, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.